The consequence is that you do not have business intelligence. And that means you do not have data, or you do not have the ability to access data to tell you how your business is performing, to tell you where your business is not performing, and to tell you what you could do about it. Right? If you don't have that visibility, if you don't have the intelligence about your own business, how could you possibly make any changes here? It's impossible.
Hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I'm the host of the Business Transformation Podcast. And this is the show for business transformators who are part business strategists, part business designers, part collaborators, and part negotiators. Business transformators have moved past just business design and includes oversight of implementation of those business designs and business transformations, and includes stakeholder management, coordination, and negotiation. If you work in strategy development and implementation and work to ensure that the strategy is aligned to the business design and technology, you are probably a business transformator. This is the show where we speak to industry experts and professionals to share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you start, turn around, and grow your business transformation. Welcome to the Business Transformation Podcast. And in this episode, we are talking to one of those industry experts. We are talking to Philippe. Now, Philippe, I want to make sure I get this pronunciation of your surname correct. Mantucci. Okay. Got it fifth time right. Okay. All right. Moving right along. Okay. So Philippe is a more than 2 decades experience in digital transformation in the construction industry. Now, that may come for a paradigm shift for some of the audience there. This is construction. We're talking buildings, concrete, hard bricks and mortar. Digital transformation in that industry for the last 20 years has his own practice. So we're going to get into, as we do cover on the show. Welcome to the show. First of all, Philippe, how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the show.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. So as a business transformation expert in construction for more than 2 decades, we're going to cover, for our audience, we have 3 points we always cover, is the industry. What is the market doing right now in terms of digital transformation in the construction industry? Are they doing it right? Are they doing it wrong? Are they laggards? They're miles behind, or they're maybe the leaders? What's working? What's not working? Number 2 is, over these 20 years of experience, I should also said that Philippe is also a former engineer. So here is a guy that comes from the business, from operations, is now in their consulting role. And you know my personal preference, or the audience would know, is that it's always good when you've got a consultant that comes from the business, because they speak the business's language, and they know what it's like, and they feel the pain, have felt the pain of what it's like where they are now. So that's where Philippe comes from. So in terms of number 2, your approach that you follow, is there an approach that you follow when you go into clients, onto projects to run their digital transformation projects in the construction industry? And if so, what is that approach? And number 3, having done these multi-year, around the world, global projects for over 20 years, if you could do it all again, what would you do differently? Okay, starting off, first one. Okay, the digital transformation in the construction industry. Now, this is the paradigm shift for a lot of people. That maybe we're talking lease, construction business, digital transformation. Where does digital transformation come into the construction industry?
Yeah, so I think it's a good point you make there about paradigm shift. It can be seen as that. I've been long enough in the industry now to kind of have a strong view about what's happening, or a clear view as to what's happening in the industry. About 10 years ago, I would say, maybe more, 15 years max, we've seen the construction industry beginning to, the way I say Heath, is falling in love with data, right?
Oh, yeah, really?
So,
okay.
Yeah, well, is that kind of knowing that there's data out there that we can access, and we can do something good with it.
Yep.
So this kind of movement started about, as I said, 10, 15 years ago, very shyly. Some organizations could see, the power, the potential of actually capturing data and doing something magical with it.
Yep.
But back then, compared to other industries, we were just not there. We didn't have the tools. We didn't have the skills, more than anything, to be honest. So it was really hard. It was very slow start. And you may not know this, but the construction industry works on very tight margins. So really, really risk adverse. So anything that is new that comes through that may be seen as a disruptor to the way in which people operate, it tends to be seen, from far away. Let others do that first, and then I'll follow. So it's a bit of a catch-22 thing, unless someone actually gets it done and puts it forward and develops a methodology that can be copied by other organizations or shared knowledge. It's not going to happen. So and that's what we saw for the early stages of this kind of shift from doing things on paper to actually moving things to more technologically advanced ways of building. And so it's been quite a journey, to be honest. I remember starting in construction, and we're still using paper heavily. Not just you're printing out drawings and going out to a site, and have a look at the drawing that's printed with you, but actually drawing it in itself. You see, as an engineer, I would actually sketch by hand and hand them over to the guys on site to put something together. So madness, really, right? When you think back about it. But anyway, that happened. So that was a starting point, I think. And it took quite a few years to start seeing some progress being made, to be honest. And I think one of the key things was when technology became a bit more powerful and a bit more focused on fixing the problems that the construction industry had.
Specific.
And very, very specific software vendors and software providers. Autodesk, for example, they were the kind of early creators of software that was specifically designed to support engineering and construction. So once that took place, the adoption kind of moved on quite rapidly, and we saw something creating something was born that today we call BIM, building information modeling.
BIM.
And basically it's basically what we call the golden thread of data and information. So it basically allows for an early stages of design by an engineer or an architect to sit digital kind of vehicle, a digital thing, right? And as the project evolves, as the design evolves, that thing evolves with it, right? So it becomes, it's a model, it's a 3D model in effect. It's a data model that represents graphically what the building will be, or what the highway will be.
A high level outline straw man of the construction.
Yes. And it begins as a skeleton, and then with time it gets filled in with more data and more information that gets passed along in the journey of the life cycle of a project, for example. Right? So that's something that they really landed very well with the industry. So we could see that
the mover there was the provider was Odesk, you say? Was it Odesk, the solution or the provider?
Yeah, well, there's many.
One of many.
I'm just giving one as an example, but Autodesk is one that kind of AutoCAD was a very powerful tool back in the days, and it's what we all jumped on board on that kind of. We learned the trade, or the new trade of digitizing design and engineering through AutoCAD. I was, I suppose, privileged enough to work in an organization that it was global. So we had access to all this technology right from the word go. Still go to SMEs in construction, and I still see them drawing by hand. I still see them using very, very basic level of Autodesk tools or CAD tools. So although I'm saying we're doing the right, although I'm saying that 10 years ago this happened, you can see how slow the uptake has been in the industry. Even more so with small companies, the SMEs. But so that was kind of a really good, I would say, injection of positive approach to digitizing the industry, and then from there, I think what happened was a bit of what we call the Industry 4.0, right? The fourth industrial revolution, which is a whole data digital revolution, right? And yes, I was saying that that industrial revolution really was enabled by two key things. One was, or is, the easier access to technology.
Yep.
So you get a lot more tools that are readily available to be adopted and thrown into projects that are going to make things faster, better, more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But also access to the skills, access to people, employees who actually understand how to use these tools and how to adopt them for their projects.
Yes.
So that combined kind of enable that kind of digital approach to construction.
Nice one.
And from the back, you can see a lot more tools being deployed, a lot more tools coming to market. A lot of them actually designed by engineers and by construction experts who partner up with software developers to create this solution.
So the advantage there for the industry is, instead of getting vendors who are, I've had it in the business architecture industry where they've taken a tool from another industry and basically just put a cover over the front, and essentially it's still the same tool for another purpose, but they have now marketed it, and it's, people they've slapped an expensive price tag on it and said, well, it's expensive and therefore it must be good. I'm like, no. And so, but the benefit here, if you had actual engineers from the market, from the industry who've created it, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's great, and I think the industry, through government support, investment in innovation, R&D, and so on, it really has helped to actually encourage engineers, encourage people who understand construction to go away and develop tools and digital solutions that will actually fix the problems that we have to begin with. So, and that's great to see. That's really good to see. And from the back of that, we've seen now software that supports project management, streamlining tasks, making communications more greater visibility as to how projects are managed. Also, you've seen drones actually being adopted a lot more in the industry, and that's great because it just makes things a lot easier and safer, even in terms of surveying, for example, large expanses of a terrain. The Internet of Things is also something that really is happening a lot in the industry, and is taking a lot of importance, really, specifically when it comes to smart buildings. So you can imagine, to really understand how buildings operate, how they work, are they too hot, are they too cold? Are they being utilized efficiently, right? You can put all sorts of sensors in these assets and really get to understand, are they performing? Can we get more out of these buildings? Can we reduce service charges, for example? So that's another area where, the industry really is picking up on things.
So it could almost be a competitive advantage if they got a good handle on, like you were just saying, efficiency of a building, one construction and usage.
Absolutely right. And we see this a lot. And it definitely is a competitive advantage. If you've got the skills and the capability to provide these solutions to your customer, the customer will prefer you as a contractor or as a construction professional. Absolutely.
So how does it work then for competitiveness? Is it a big market? Is it a tight market? If you've got a competition for technology and skills or people, then I would imagine there's a bit of headhunting possibly within the industry of going, well, they've got good people, good talent. Let's see if we can encourage them to maybe come over to us.
Yeah, but Heath, I think you may be comparing us to other industries that move a lot faster.
Okay. Yeah.
What you just described there, there is either just beginning to happen now, or it will be happening very soon. So slowly, construction industry has learned the advantages of being digital, of using data, of really getting to grip with capturing, storing, and using data for insights. That's happened over a period of 10 years.
10 years,
Now we're at that stage of opportunity where these people we're talking about, very, very clever, very skillful individuals who are getting the startups going on, getting the right funding in place to develop these solutions, these tools. for the rest of the industry to use, and for them obviously to make a buck. But that is happening now. So that competitiveness in terms of who's got the latest gadget, who's got the latest tools, who's got the latest skill, who's got the skills to make it happen,
the capabilities.
I think that, to be honest.
So we're just there now.
Because in the industry, we're still struggling to find bricklayers, electricians, plasterers. So that really is where the primary concern remains for a construction company. Okay.
The
now,
fundamentals.
Did this? Yeah, fundamentals. Absolutely, Heath. Absolutely. Such low margins, you can't afford to get it wrong. You can't afford to run late. Because you're putting your business at risk. So the whole digital effort is currently being seen as secondary. Okay. And that, whilst it's understandable, it's one of those things that I despair personally when I see organizations not taking that leap of faith and really going full on with a cohesive investment, a risk managed investment to adopting tools and digitizing their businesses. Okay. Because in not doing so is actually having a short-term approach to your business. Having a short-term view of your business. Oh, well, I need to win this job. I need to deliver this project because otherwise we will not survive for another 2 years. That's short-term. Think about the investment that you could make in actually making your operations and business better by digitizing your processes. And then you're looking at a 5-year plan, let alone 2 years.
Okay. So all right.
So I'm moving there a little bit as to what I want to discuss later about what's not going so well. But going back to what I can see construction industry doing currently that is working, and they're kind of taking that move into digital is again it's the adoption of tools. So data analytics, absolutely. Things are off the shelf. Nothing that doesn't have to be that clever. Things off the shelf, pick them up, adopt them in your business, and it helps you. So data analytics, procurement platforms, VR and AR solutions, for example, virtual reality.
VR.
So there's a lot of things there that I could just throw in a basket. Say, there you go. Here, that's everything they're doing correctly.
Okay.
But then that in itself is a problem here, because whilst the adoption exists, whilst the adoption is there from project teams, the adoption of these tools happens to be in isolation from each other.
Okay.
So there isn't.
It needs a holistic across.
No, there's not a holistic adoption of specific tools. This is down to each individual preference, really. Construction projects are very, very well driven by project directors. Project directors hold a very, very important role to play in delivering projects. And project directors, they'll have a preference on what tools they want to use.
Their own preference.
It goes down to personal preference, right?
Personal preference,
because I used it in my previous project, I'm going to use it in my next project, right? Or because I know the guy that sells me the software, I'm going to keep on using it, right? But then in the same company, a project director in a different project, pretty similar projects, the other project is using a different tool. And those two tools are not connected. They're not speaking to each other. They work in isolation. They've got different data sets. And yet they're collecting the same data, right? So what you end up here is that by selecting tools in isolation from each other, you end up in this situation where it's an uncoordinated investment. So you're actually paying,
twice.
Tools. You're paying, the cost of those licenses for 3, 4, 5 different pieces of software that do exactly the same job. Where you're paying 5 different licenses, 5 different vendors.
5
instead
times,
of just one. An enterprise agreement, right? So your investment is not giving you the ROI. And that's what the board sees. That's what the CFO is going to look into and go, well, hang on, we're spending so much in technology, I'm not getting the
return.
ROI that I was expecting. But it's because you're spending so much in technology. You shouldn't have to, right? If you were to have an overall umbrella or an overall
strategy,
approach,
an
ecosystem,
yes,
right, of digital, and
missing the ecosystem, holistic view.
Yeah, exactly. An ecosystem of digital tools, and that's what is not in place. And then it comes to me the biggest problem of having this kind of approach to separate and coordinated systems, siloed data.
Yes.
It gives me aches all my body.
Yeah.
to see so many different data sets all over the business.
Yeah.
All over the organization, different data sets.
Not a single
all
source
of them
of truth.
relating to the same thing.
Yeah.
But they all relate to the same thing, but they tell you different value.
Oh my goodness.
Let me give you an example, right? So when I was back in, I used to work for a tier 1 contractor, global business, right? And I once actually stopped the CFO and I said, well, hang on, can we just go through how you gain information, how you get data, how you get the knowledge that the business is performing well, right? So I said, for example, how do you know the valuation? At the end of every month, you carry out a valuation to see how much work you've completed so that you can invoice the customer. So I said, how do you know the valuation at the end of each month for every project? Oh, well, I get information from the project director. Then I get information from the commercial director. Then I get information from his finance director.
Oh, wow.
And I said, okay, so you get 3 or 4 different numbers, and please tell me they all say the same thing.
Yeah.
He says, no, they never coincide.
Oh.
They're never the same number.
Yeah.
You think about that for a second, right? So we're not now talking about projects that are similar or projects that are next to each other or projects that belong to the same sector. No, we're talking about the same project.
Same project.
People in the same team, right?
Yeah. And they got 3 different versions.
The CFO is completely different because you're using different tools here. Because it isn't a coordinated approach to this digital ecosystem that you can actually take advantage of.
Okay.
So in summary, yes, the industry has woken up to the greatness of digital and data, the value that it brings.
Yep.
But they're not doing it well. Right?
Okay. Not doing it well.
They're not doing it in a way that can actually exploit it or scale it up. Okay. It remains project driven, it remains in isolation, and it does not provide that kind of greater visibility of how business performs.
Okay. There's a well-kept secret in business transformation that no one is talking about. And that's 70% of business transformations fail, wasting time, money, and missed opportunities. There are 4 common causes of project failure: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. Clients, however, don't know this, and more importantly, they don't know what to do. They're either told they need reams and reams of beautiful PowerPoint presentations, but they're really just marketing documents. Marketing for the consultancy to convince you of the more work they will bill you for. They are just designed to run up the billable hours, or they're told to send their staff off to do training to get certified in old, outdated methods that result in 70% failure. Clients know if they bring in the Big 4, they will get a Big 4 bill and no transformation. They load the project up with junior staff that produce interesting but useless documentation that they will tell you it is needed, that is full of jargon and the latest buzzwords. It sounds very impressive, but means absolutely nothing. It's well known in the industry. You get a Big 4 in, they'll steal your watch to tell you the time, and you pay them millions for the favor. That's the old broken model of business transformation. If you're ready to move to the new model of business transformation, join me. My name is Heath Gascoigne, and I'm the author of this book, The Business Transformation Playbook: How to Implement Your Organization's Target Operating Model, TOM, and achieve a 0% failure rate using the 6-step Agile framework, HOBA, House of Business Architecture, that I created and have been using for over 15 years with my private clients, including the UK government, FTSE 100 companies and startups. I'm the guy the clients call to come in and set up and turn around their failing transformations. If you're a business owner, leader or manager, a change or transformation consultant, or you lead one, and you want to move to the new model of transformation, I'm holding a free 90-minute masterclass to get your 2023 year off to the best possible start with your transformation. Make sure you join me. You need to know where and how you're going wrong and what exactly you need to do and only do, not boiling the ocean trying to do everything, especially how to don't get caught in the interesting but useless documentation trap, and how to avoid joining the 70% that fail, but instead join the top 30% club that make business transformation a success first time, on time. Details how to register are below this video. Click the link below. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we'll get you started. All right, so so summary, the industry has really picked it up, the digital banner, Hannah, or what we say, if you're going to go in the Olympics and you've got the, what do you call it? Well, I don't know, is it a banner? The torch. They've got the digital torch. And so they've been running for like 2010, 15 years, and it's a slow burner, but they're in on it, but they're doing it in isolation, even on they're saying just then that on the same project. And it's coming down to, I've seen it myself with guys that have come onto projects and they've used a tool at another place and go, well, it worked well there. Although it worked well there, it was a slightly different project, different context. It's not like an easy, let's use this like current project here with the government here. They want to copy and paste what's done in London. So, well, wait, the funding model of the business you want to copy is fundamentally different to this model. So it's not a copy and paste. But so that in itself has issues. All right, so the industry has got they've got the bug, if you say they've seen the magic.
Yeah, absolutely,
yeah. But they're doing it in isolation. So there's a bit of so your words there. It's not holistic. It's not scalable, and it's missing a few things. So that's probably going to bring us on to our second point. So first point, what the industry is doing well. What the lessons are learned, where the opportunities or lessons are. So we covered that. Our second point would lead us probably on to, now you know what's working in the industry or not working. I'm sure you've got an approach that you follow when you go into these projects here, and to say, hey, so what is that approach that you follow? Do you have an approach, and then what is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very simplistic model that I use, Heath. There isn't this cumbersome, difficult Oxford level of intelligence in there. Mm-hmm. It's very simple, and I think the simpler it is, the better.
Yes,
simplicity. And so my approach is very simple. I always go into a business. The first question I ask is, where are you at now?
Yes.
Where are you at now? How do you operate? Show me how you run an invoice. Show me how you buy a concrete. Show me how you prove delivery of equipment or labor on a project site. Show me how you do that. Mm-hmm. Do you fill in a form? Do you make a phone call? Do you tap it into your own software, something like that? Show me how you work, right? Yep. Let me have a look. Let me experience that. Let me sit down with your procurement director for a couple of days and really see how things work, right? Yep. So that's the very first thing I do, is really understand where are they at today? How do they operate? And then I ask the right questions. I say, where do you want to be? Yeah. Because for you to have called me, for you to have asked me to come here and have a look, is because you already know there is an improvement that you can make to your business.
Yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't call me, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't be in an office, in a meeting with you. Yeah. So where do you want to be? What are the areas that you have committed to deliver to your shareholders or any stakeholders that you're committed to, right? It could be local government, or it could be private equity fund. So where do you want to be?
Yep.
And what areas you want to work on, right? And having absolute clarity of those two areas, to me, is absolutely key. Okay.
Yep.
And the third point that we put together is how we're gonna go from where you are today,
yes,
to where you want to be tomorrow.
Yep.
And I call that a roadmap.
The roadmap.
So
yep.
We put together a roadmap, okay, of what are we going to focus on, an actionable list of items that we're going to focus on to move from A to Z. Is that simple, Heath? There isn't much more than that. Now, the thing is, moving from A to B, or moving from current state to future state, what I encourage, and I do like your concept of business transformation, digital transformation is the same thing. Absolutely. You're transforming the business, and I use change management principles to support that transformation. But absolutely 100%, that transformation can be enhanced by the adoption of technology.
Oh, absolutely.
If you bring in technology in, my goodness, you're flying. You become an absolute leading competitor in your area or sector, whatever you get up to. So, and that's the opportunity that I love dropping to, the CEOs, the boards, the project directors, that the opportunity of just do it, just really throw a bit, do this with a, yes, be user-centric, yes, be customer-centric, but my goodness, also be data-centric, because we're all rich with data, right? We all got data popping out of our ear.
I was just speaking about that.
Don't just keep it aside. Don't ignore it. Make use of it, right? Make use of your resources. And data, one of the most valuable resources that an organization could have, right? So let's not ignore it. We've got the tools, we've got the skills. Let's make the most of that data to improve the business, right? But that is my approach. Now, I can make it more complicated now, Heath, by telling you about my skeleton is always a digital operating model. Okay, so I design, build, and implement digital operating models that are specifically designed for that organization, for their context, for their size, for their area of expertise, that will deliver what they want to achieve in their future state. So we're not going to put together an operating model that's going to increase revenue when what they actually focus on is reducing carbon, for example, right? So it has to be contextualized. It has to be
context,
specific to, because you cannot pick an operating model off the shelf and apply it. You can't. It can be a framework. It can be like HOBA. There you go. HOBA, that you have your own framework of approach on how to transform business. It doesn't mean it's gonna, just because you use the same framework, it doesn't mean that they're all gonna end up with the same solution.
Yes, absolutely. Right? Yes.
So it's
quite a few of these things.
Exactly. So it's having that framework approach, really, that, and there's a number of stages. You've got 7 stages to take you through, concept definition all the way to, continuous improvement. So there's a number of steps that we take, but again, they're bespokely delivered for each organization. So there isn't one size fits all.
That's true. I agree on that.
No, sorry, absolutely, absolutely.
So I like what I like what you're saying there. The digital operating model. That is, I think you can codify that one. The digital operating model, maybe the digital operating model for construction. That is the Philippe approach there. I think you're going to have to trademark that one.
There is that. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think there's a book coming just quietly. All right, so we'll keep talking on that one. I like it. So I like how you said from the beginning, it's KISS, right? Keep it simple. So keep it simple, Simon. I think what I've seen, and I think for you to be a veteran of the many years, many projects, global projects, is that, and even Richard Branson talks about it, quoted often around about complexity. Complexity is the enemy. Any fool, I think his words are that any fool can make something complex. It takes a genius to make it simple. And this is the thing. If we got so much more data, the tendency there is to go more information, more complex. The key is to strip it back, to do what the minimum you can do to keep it simple. So, I congratulate you on that one. That is key. And of course, when you're talking construction, and if it's a multi-story building or maybe multi-site construction, and you have a lot of stakeholders in the, as you're saying, the bricklayers, plumbers, etc., you got thousands of stakeholders involved in these projects, big budgets, multiple year, and so they're highly complex. And then you talk about the risk adverse and the margins are small, so there is no room for error. Yes, and so, you know, technology, as you said, is an enabler, and if they can get that right, you know, the competitive advantage is there. The challenge, which you were saying earlier, is that because of the nature of the industry, the size of investments and the risk, the margins are small, the risk aversion is high, and so they are from your perspective, they're looking for, like you said earlier, they're like laggards into technology. They're waiting for the early adopters to try it out, so they can go, you know what, let those guys try it out first, and if they get it right, you know, we'll tag along. And okay, and so then they're the laggards, and say, okay, now it's tried and tested. We want to try some of it, but we're still gonna like tip our toes in the water and not get too deep straight away. Yeah, and then they'll go to like the project director, the finance director, and they go, well, what are you doing? What did you do last time? Let's just use that. Okay, so
that's right. That's right. Absolutely. And I think I want to touch on that point you just mentioned, the complexity, because there are many levels to complexity, right? And I think you're right. I want to pick on this point specifically. The technology can be complex. Let's not ignore that. All the way from network systems, now with AI and so on. If you're not native to the digital era, for example, which I have to say the construction industry isn't, and today still most of the workforce is above 40, so we're not that truly native to digital tools. So it will be complex to understand what these youngsters are talking about, right? So, and it can be daunting, it can be scary to actually be the CEO of a business, okay, and having to accept or having to listen to, say, a consultant, one of the big four, for example, and they come down, bags full of terminology that I wonder if they know what it means, right? And they just throw this terminology there, they scare you, and they tell you that unless you do this, you're going to be out of business, right? So it must be quite daunting for that CEO to think, whoa, not only I don't understand what they're talking about, but I actually have to go with it, because if I don't, they just told me I'm going to be out, right? So something that I really, really focus on when I speak to decision makers is to give them peace of mind that just because they don't understand the lingo, it doesn't mean that they cannot make decisions that are sound for the business. All they need is a translator. They need someone who understands the technology, but also understands their business. They understand construction.
A conduit.
That's right. Because the transformation has to be owned by the business. It cannot be owned by an external factor, an external party, right? So if you understand the business, you understand how they operate, and you can translate that technology for them, then you remove that complexity. Right? And you're not making technology simpler, you're just making the adoption of technology simpler, because now you understand how far you can take it, you understand how scalable a solution can be, you understand how to set up your systems to focus on that transition from where you are today to where you want to be.
The understanding.
What it does, absolutely, what it does here is that it removes that reluctancy from organizations. It's one of the three areas I think have there are huge barriers to transformation. One of them is reluctancy, right? The other one is lack of digital model, and the other one is inconsistent value of data across the business, okay? But we'll deal with those another day. But reluctancy is one of the three key barriers to me, and it's the complexity of technology, or not understanding what technology can do for you, not understanding the benefit that it brings, and it's the fact that it's also seen as a disrupting process. It's going to disrupt my projects. It's going to disrupt my workforce that is already happy printing pieces of paper and take them to a project site.
Don't see it as an enabler. They see it as a disruptor.
Exactly. So because no one's there to explain it to them, because no one's there to support them, They do not take the leap of faith. They're reluctant.
Yeah. So they need some,
and
they want some trusted hands, right?
Exactly. And this is where we come in, right here. This is why you and I exist.
Yes.
Because we go to them and say, look, I understand construction. I'm a chartered engineer and I've been so for 15 years. I understand every single part of construction, but I also understand technology.
Yes.
So let me be your helping hand. Let me be your right-hand man that can actually take you navigate through this craziness of data and systems and networks. So, and that's the role we play. And that's the role that we choose to play, which someone has to, because otherwise we do not see progress in our industries.
Oh, yeah,
right?
No, bang on. Yes. I talked about this in my talk in South Africa. It's around that, like I said, the title of the speech was, with great power becomes great responsibility. And as you were just saying there, because if we are the trusted hands that help and guide through current state to future state, and these projects continue to, in this industry, 70% failure rate, one, the organization doesn't get the return it wants. The customers don't get the return they want. Innovation doesn't happen. The industry suffers. Then ultimately the country suffers. And so where did it all come from? The guys running projects. And it's like, there is a systematic systems thinking, systems linking, cause and effect relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that point, actually, cause and effect, I really want to make it clear that there is a point to digitizing your business. There is a point to having a digital operating model in your business, right? And that point is what I call business intelligence, right? So what I mean with that is that there is a consequence from not having those three things I mentioned earlier, not having a digital operating model, being reluctant, and not having consistent value of data across your business. The consequence is that you do not have business intelligence. And that means you do not have data, or you do not have the ability to access data to tell you how your business is performing, to tell you where your business is not performing, and to tell you what you could do about it. Right? If you don't have that visibility, if you don't have the intelligence about your own business, how could you possibly make any changes here? It's impossible.
You're wasting time.
Right? Or you just kind of relying on people's opinions. Well, my opinion is that we should change the color of the background on your screen. Why? Well, it's my opinion, because I don't like yellow, I like green, right? Well, where's the data to tell you that actually green is more attractive, it gives people's attention, and green is actually quite boring, depressing, so that's why you don't have green. So, and that decision making, when it's based on intelligence, and intelligence being fueled by data,
on the digital operating model.
Exactly. So that business intelligence is allowing you to make better decisions on your business. So now all of a sudden, if you look at construction, for example, low margin, I've already said that, prone to accidents. We keep on injuring people on site day in, day out. A lot of waste, which means high carbon volume, carbon. So we're not getting to net zero. And very low productivity. Okay, because we keep getting it wrong, because we don't have visibility as to the things that we're doing right. Okay, so if you don't have that intelligence to make better decisions that eradicate those areas I just mentioned, how can you possibly improve your business? How can you possibly hope?
We cannot
aim to improve the performance or the profitability of your business. It's an impossibility. It's an impossibility. So I spend a lot of time speaking to C-suite boards, decision makers, really making them understand that you're not doing this for the sake of it. You're not setting up, digital and technology and access to data because it's the right thing to do. Well, it is, but not for the sake of it, right? You're doing it because the key targets of a construction organization are going to be improved by having that intelligence, by having access to data that is delivered through a digital operating model. That's
fantastic, man. There's gold. So so I want to summarize a few things there. There's a lot there to take in. So The starting point was the complexity, and from that complexity there came a lot of things, right? And I think in summary is that without having your digital focus, the digital operating model, you're lacking that intelligence from the data that they already have. It's like, it's not that you don't have it, you have it already.
Correct.
And it's disparate at the moment, many sources of truth, even as you said, on the same project, looking at it 3 different ways, 3 different people looking at this yellow and say they want green or blue or purple. Okay, so yeah, they're not telling you how it's performing, what bad performance looks like, nor what to do about it. Yeah, so you've got these, we'll say, industry issues that are always present: the low margins, high injuries, a lot of waste, and low productivity. It's like that's like the perfect storm for massive transformation. And then and that's what I talk about in these transformation projects. The 4 causes of transformation failure: lack of business user involvement, lack of senior leadership support, changing requirements, and incomplete requirements. And what's all common with each one of these, it's nothing to do with technology, it's all to do with people. So it's all these issues here. It's like, okay, we've got low margins, lots of injuries, lots of waste, and low productivity. And so it's clear that if they hit the data would help them immensely. But the challenge isn't the data, it's the people's willingness to adopt.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Because at no point we have said, oh, the technology is not there. Or the software available is not enough, it doesn't really manage data very well. At no point we have said that. On the contrary, we have said the technology is still available, the off-the-shelf, pick them up, they're ready to go, right? It's not complicated. You got experts that can install it for you. So it's not the technology the problem, it's the human people. Side of things.
Yes, the people. Absolutely. All right, okay, so that's your approach that you follow, and so I'm going to challenge you here. I'm going to challenge you publicly, because this goes public. It goes public. LinkedIn goes public on YouTube. I think there's you talked about simple and simplicity, and I'm a big believer of that. So my challenge to you is you put that in a book. I'm telling you, that's a challenge. I'm going to challenge you. They're publicly challenged now. Okay, so there can be a first version, and a second version, and a third version, but I think that's gold. I don't think, actually, I come from a family in construction. My father's had his own business for up until retiring recently, and I've been surrounded by it. My grandparents and family all involved around construction. My younger sister, my mother, my older sister, real estate. So we've been surrounded by it. My parents have built their house many times. I've renovated my house from the ground up. I have a slight little idea of CADs and AutoCADs and dealing with different. So I have a little inclination. I don't have a lot, not like you, for 20 years in the detail. So I think, and I've never seen it, and no one's ever talked about it in my experience and around my family, around the operating model, definitely not a digital operating model in the construction area. So I reckon there's a book coming, man. All right. So
you know what? Someone very wise who's now becoming a good friend of mine told me there's a book in everyone.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
you told me that last week. So,
there is.
Heath, what I agree with you. I think it's important that certain things are documented and replicated where possible, improved with time. Absolutely, I fully agree with that. My primary goal, to be honest, as a consultant right now, is to really support SMEs out there.
SMEs,
the smaller players. Construction, I can't remember the number now. There's thousands of construction companies in the UK, right? Building a little bit here, a little bit there, all trying to do little things. These companies don't have access to the big four to give them the guidance and support that they need to digitize and begin to form that digital operating model, right? It's my aim to reach out to these organizations and help them out, offer them a non-complex, very simple approach to digitizing their business, a specific, bespoke, designed for them, for their context.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my aim. So and you know, as you say, if a book is going to help that, I might start writing
it. We're going to catch up after this. I'll tell you what. Okay, so
it.
the SMEs, and I do feel for you there. Yeah, so they don't have access to resources. Definitely don't have, some cases don't have access to the budgets, and therefore have access to the talent. So yeah, and that's the market that you are specializing in. I will talk about later about how everyone can get a hold of you and contact details. But for the third question, having now done this for many years, many decades, the big size transformations, multi-year, across the world, if you could do it all again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, well, a couple of things definitely, and I'll divide them into personal level and organizational level. At personal level, I would have jumped onto the revolution a lot earlier. And I don't necessarily mean adopting digital tools or adopting solutions. I mean upskilling myself.
Yep.
I think I could have jumped on this a lot earlier and be of even more benefit to my organization when I was working for than what I was. Yep. So really upskilling, really get down to understanding how technology really works, how the technology is developed, to what use, to what purpose. I would have done that, Heath, to be honest. I would have actually spent a lot more time increasing my digital capability through learning, through experiencing, through throwing myself to scenarios that I wouldn't think that would be possible. Because the opportunities were there. The opportunities were there, but my focus was on, well,
other
as
things.
You said before, someone else will do it. Someone else will do it. And then I jump on board, right?
Yep.
And I think that was that if I was to do it again, I would jump on it a lot earlier.
So that's I'll just stop you there. So that there is a strong skill of self-reflection, where you can say, had I done it again, I would do differently, and these are the things I'll do differently. To say that is like, you know, all kudos. You know, so what you actually were saying is, one, you would stretch yourself. And so you would get out of the comfort zone, which is a big thing. That's a lesson for all of us, including myself. And then and there's really around personal development, skills and knowledge. And then from that would be the application of. And so, you know, bravo, tip my hat to you on that one. Okay. And the second one you were about to say?
Yeah, sorry. And the second one would be from an organizational point of view, because towards the latter years of my career within a tier one contractor, I was in a high level position. So I was able to influence decisions. I was able to direct the business towards, you know, a digital approach, towards, you know, certain targets, certain end goals, right? And so what would have been different is to actually the way in which I structured the journey to get us there. I would have done it differently. So initially, and I started, it was about 6-7 years ago, the setup was, we will adopt the tools that are specific to the problems we have.
All right. Yeah.
And that adoption of tools in isolation, there you have it. It was, as I'm saying now, was the wrong thing to do. And that's why I tell people not to do it, because I've learned from it. I've learned from the mistakes. I've got the scars. I've got the scars of software right, left, and center in complete isolation from each other. It does not end well. So I would have actually been more structured, a bit more overarching approach as to how are we going to make sure that everything is connected? How are we going to make sure that the data, that golden thread that's going to run through all the software that we have, our ecosystem, our software portfolio, how are we going to make sure that everyone has access to it and everyone has access to the same data sets, not separate data sets? And that structured approach is the right thing I would have done differently going back. And that's why I'm now so vocal about this digital operating model, because from the learning is where I've realized that guys don't make the same mistake as I did.
So you've got the scars, you've got the t-shirt, and that's from the lessons learned. And I'm the same, is that you have learned from your experience what works and what doesn't, But you were saying earlier for
Right.
the companies, if they were to understand their data, they'll know how it was performing and not performing and how to do something about it. And you have been through that journey personally, so you know now, having been lived and now got the t-shirt, what good looks like. And now you can, as I am, and others in our positions of going out there and teaching others. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, Philippe, so we'll wrap it up there. Now, guys, so ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get a hold of Philippe, I'll put in the show notes Philippe's contact details, email, website, LinkedIn, so you know how to get a hold of him. If you're an SME in the construction industry and you are suffering from some of those things that we're talking about, that you've got lack of visibility, or you've got your project director, finance director, operational director, all having similar conversations about the same data, but 3 different outcomes, then you probably got to speak to Philippe here. All right. So Philippe, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to stop recording now because I want to talk to you before we sign off. Okay. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay. Cheers. Bye.
Pleasure's mine.